Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jagdeep Ahluwalia. I am the founding secretary of the 21-year-old Indo-American Chamber of Commerce, which I currently serve as executive director. First, a little bit of logistics. Today's webinar will be recorded and forwarded to all the participants, and we may even load it to the Chamber's website, IACCGH.com. We are proud to have been serving the business community for over 20 years, and we work closely with our sister chambers and associations like the Asian Chamber and the Indian Doctors Association, and many others that I will not name in the interest of time. I would like to thank Senator Cornyn and Jay Guerrero, his ambassador in our area, for the great work they have always been doing to support the community, and especially for the great work the Senator is doing in this crisis. I would like to acknowledge Mr. Balsareen of Brass Kink and Dr. Durga Agarwal of Piping Technology, who are major chamber supporters and are the two named webinar sponsors. Their profile is on the presentation, which we will be forwarding. They are both former honorees of the chamber, and Dr. Durga Agarwal was the founding president of the chamber. We also want to recognize Shell and Shipcom Wireless, who are also strong supporters of the chamber, and acknowledge our advisors, Dr. Renu Khator, Dr. Durga Agarwal, and Consul General Mahajan, who have joined us for today's webinar. We have an upcoming event on April the 24th, which has some of the world leaders in the areas that we are concerned about today. Everybody on this call will be receiving an invitation to log on to that webinar. And we have a special webinar with the Consul General next Tuesday, April the 28th, and another special healthcare related webinar on May the 4th, where we will be focusing on the BCG research that one of our members and directors at large, Dr. Kamath, is involved in. With this, it is my honor and my privilege to introduce the president of the Indo-American Chamber, the chairman of our board. Tarush Anand is an attorney by profession. He is a partner at the law firm of Brown Sims, where he practices civil litigation. He has presented a broad range of domestic and international businesses in various types of business disputes across the country. He has received several awards and honors over the years, including an AV preeminent rating from Martingale-Hubbell and selection to the Texas Super Lawyers Rising Stars list for several years. Ladies and gentlemen, I present the chairman of our board, the president of the Indo-American Chamber, Tarush Anand.
Thank you, Jagdeep. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you everyone for joining us today and being here in our next webinar in the COVID-19 webinar series. These have been challenging times, obviously, for many of our members, many of our supporters, and we're here to do what we can to help you make it through this time. And in that vein, we are very grateful to be joined today by our senior U.S. Senator, Senator John Cornyn. Senator Cornyn, as most of you know, has a long history of public service. He served Texas as a judge, as a justice on the Texas Supreme Court, as Attorney General, and now obviously as our senior United States Senator. In the Senate, he's earned a reputation as an articulate and powerful voice for Texans in Washington. And he's known for reaching across the aisle to get things done, as he did recently with the CARES Act, which he'll tell us about very soon. On behalf of the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce of Greater Houston, it is my honor and privilege to welcome our Senator, our partner, and our friend, Senator John Cornyn.
Well, thank you, Tarush, and for the introduction and your friendship. And Jagdeep, thank you for organizing this call and recognizing Jay Guerrero. And you've given Jay a new title. Ordinarily, he would go by the title of regional director, but I kind of like ambassador better. And we may name all my regional directors ambassador. It fits the job. I'm glad my friends at the Indo-American Chamber and other chambers across the area teamed up to make this possible so we can provide as much information as possible to you as is available in response to the coronavirus. I know the Houston area has been hit hard been in regular contact with Mayor Sylvester Turner and the judge. And I know it's a difficult time for all of you, not just as business owners and employers, but as parents, friends, and neighbors. And I want to take a second to recognize Mr. Gopal Sabjani, who's developed a test for the coronavirus at his lab in Webster. It's innovators like Gopal who will help us out of this crisis, and it's important that we thank him and recognize him for his efforts during this trying time. Many of you also have family and friends and business interests in India and other parts of the world that have been particularly hit hard by the coronavirus. My staff and I are closely monitoring the global effects of this crisis, and my hope is that the countries across the world flatten the curve as soon as possible. I know India is in a period of lockdown. I've recently discussed that with the Indian ambassador to the United States, the new ambassador, who I actually knew during a previous tour in Washington, D.C. But we talked about India's response, and obviously with with a lot of people and many congested conditions, it's going to be a challenge, but we will all get through this together. Let me say that, unfortunately, crises like this tend to bring out the best in people, but unfortunately tend to bring out the worst in people too. And I've been deeply disturbed by reports of racial discrimination that have been taking place amidst this crisis. We are lucky to live in an incredibly diverse state, which has benefited from the contribution of those who've come around the world and chosen to call Texas home. There is no place for this prejudice, period. In response to this crisis, Congress has now passed 3 bills. Actually, the Senate has passed 4 bills effective last night. We'll talk about that in a second. But our focus is on, number one, providing our healthcare providers the resources they need, and then supporting our workers and businesses who've been negatively impacted by the economic fallout. So let me start with the CARES Act, which was passed about 2 weeks ago and signed by the president. This was the biggest piece of legislation, I think, in American history. And certainly, I never would have believed you if you'd said that I would vote for a $2.2 trillion spending bill and the Senate would vote for it unanimously. But we did, because we're in the midst of an emergency. So we've committed $100 billion to hospitals that we are depending on to stand by in case we see a surge of cases in their ICUs and to use things like ventilators and the like. Thankfully, so far, we haven't seen the overwhelming of our hospitals. And in the meantime, ironically, some of them are laying off employees because we've asked them to eliminate elective surgery for the time being. I think the governor has now made an announcement allowing elective surgery to occur again, but our hospitals and our frontline healthcare providers deserve all our support. We also know that there's been a demand on masks, gloves, and other personal protective equipment. One of the things we've learned from this virus is we cannot depend on China for the supply chain for some of these critical items. And we're going to be looking at ways we can work with other partners. Perhaps India would be a logical partner as another democracy. And it operates transparently as a source for some of these, but we need to make more of that here in the United States as well. And at the same time that we are in a race to deal with this and contain with this virus, we are in the process of studying, I think now, 72 clinical trials for a cure, for therapeutics, as well as a vaccine, hopefully, that'll be available so that after the end of this year, perhaps we can relegate this coronavirus to the status of seasonal flu, having vaccinated people who are the most vulnerable and who need that vaccine the most, while having a treatment for others who get it, but for whom it will be more of an inconvenience rather than a life or death question. So let's turn now to the economic impact. We know that many service industry companies, hotels, bars, restaurants, they've had to shut down completely to comply with the directives from the mayors and the judges and the and the governor. So we felt it was very important for workers who had no income to get them some direct financial help, which is why the CARES Act provides for an adult that makes up to $75,000 a year receiving a $1,200 check. Many of those checks have already been direct deposited, and others that haven't are on their way. But a family of four with a household income of $150,000 can receive up to $3,400. We've also expanded unemployment insurance eligibility and provided an extra $600 a week in federal benefits. We know that the Texas Workforce Commission has been crushed by the number of applications, and they are working to build capacity and process those applications as they should. But the good news is that they are also that if you apply for and receive the benefit, it will be retroactive to the date that you lost your job. So we know that there is a combination of things we need to give to people to cover their expenses until the smoke clears. Then we wanted to concentrate on our small businesses, because that is the source of our great economy and also employment for a vast majority of Texans. We provided a $300 billion paycheck protection program through the Small Business Administration, which was the most popular part of the CARES bill because it provided 8 weeks of cash flow assistance to small businesses. These are in the form of low interest loans to cover everything from rent to payroll. And here's the incentive for employers to maintain their payroll. If they do so until June, if they can, then the payroll, rent, and utility payments covered by the loan can be completely forgiven. So it will be converted from a loan to a grant. This program has been so popular that less than 2 weeks after lending began, the fund was exhausted and the SBA stopped accepting applications. We know that there was an effort 8 days ago to pass a bill that added $250 billion to the bill, but it took until yesterday for us finally to be able to get bipartisan consensus. And an additional $320 billion was added to this program. So this is a great resource for Texas small businesses and their employees, and I'm glad more business owners will now be able to take advantage of it. It also included funding for the Minority Business Development Agency's business centers. In addition to the Small Business Administration, the Houston MBDA Business Center is an excellent source for information. And finally, for medium and large businesses who need liquidity and access to credit during this crisis, this bill provides $500 billion for the Treasury's Economic Stabilization Fund to offer loans. These go to specific industries, $46 billion of it mainly to the airline industry, given the important nature of their work to our economy and national security. But the remaining $454 billion will provide loans for qualifying businesses, states, and municipalities through the Federal Reserve. Our goal is to protect workers, keep businesses afloat, and when it's time to come out of this crisis, once we've defeated the virus, to then have the economy rebound by maintaining those businesses as much as we can, ready to rehire or ready to go back to work. And that's been the goal of most of what we did in the CARES Act. I know there's a lot of questions about what the next bill will look like, but right now my priority is to see that what we've done so far is working the way we intended before we look to pass another bill. But that's why this call is so important to me. I need your feedback on what's working and what's still needed so we can focus our effort. I know my staff has been talking to many of you about the process to apply for assistance, and I'm grateful to Tim Jeffcoat, the Small Business Administration District Director, who's on our call. We'll be glad to speak in just a few minutes and answer some of your questions. And I mentioned Jay Guerrero, and I encourage you to reach out to Jay if we can be of assistance in the Houston area. So finally, thanks to my friends at the Indo-American Chamber for making this call possible. And I'm happy to take some questions. So let me turn this back over to Jagdeep to get us going.
Thank you, Senator. We've actually received a few questions. We've done our best to combine them and consolidate them. Let me kick things off, if I could, with this little-known program, the Paycheck Protection Program. There's new funds coming, hopefully soon. And so the question we're getting is, When can businesses take advantage of these incoming funds? Are applications open? What can you share?
Well, the funds have been depleted, and as soon as it's signed into law, I would expect, and Tim may have some more information on this, that applications will be begun to be accepted. But as we saw what happened before, it was first come, first serve, and some of the more aggressive applicants got their loans cleared, and others who maybe had been a little slower off the mark, or maybe they're just a mom and pop organization and had a lot of unanswered questions. Hopefully this additional money will be able to supply all the need. But as soon as it's signed into law, hopefully no later than tomorrow, we should be up and running again, and that fund replenished.
As you mentioned, Senator, Congress has now passed multiple laws to help stop the spread of COVID-19 and also help businesses and people stay afloat. We understand that no bill is going to be perfect, and so we'd like to know, what would you like to see in the next coronavirus relief package, and when can we expect it?
Well, I've seen a communication from Senator McConnell, the majority leader in the Senate, and he said he did not believe it would be appropriate for Congress or for the Senate to pass any more bills until we get back in session in person. Right now, we're scheduled to go back in session on May the 4th, although that could be extended briefly depending on circumstances. You've heard the president and others talk about infrastructure as being one of the things that we might include in a phase 4 bill. That's fine with me. That's not really COVID-19 related, but it is important, and I would support that effort. We've been actually working on some ideas for several years now, and would be glad to see some of those implemented. But mainly what I would like to see, Tarush, is to see how what we've done so far, how that works, and to fix the problems that have been created. Anytime you do anything that big and that fast, there's going to be some problems. And that's why we don't ordinarily operate at such speed and do things in such a big way, but we're in the middle of an emergency, and we felt like that was important.
The country appreciates that, Senator. My next question is, you were recently appointed to the President's Council to help the economy get going again. What thoughts can you share about what the Council and the President think on how action is going to be taken to get the economy going again, and also which segments of the economy you think are more ready to get moving than others?
Well, we know that, for example, the energy sector has been absolutely crushed by this virus and by some of the geopolitical monkey business of Saudi Arabia and Russia flooding the world markets with oil. But really, we have a lack of demand, and we need to get our economy up and running again so that demand can be addressed and met by our energy sector. But we all know that this is first and foremost a public health crisis, and so we need to take direction from our public health experts on when and how we can safely begin to reopen. We've all been going through these lockdowns and social distancing and good individual hygiene, all of which is designed to slow the spread. But I think what I'm looking at is the availability of testing, particularly antibody testing. The problem with some of the nose swab testing is you can test today and be negative, but then acquire the virus tomorrow and be positive. And we're not going to test individuals every day from here on out. So I think what we need to do is be strategic and address the people who are most vulnerable, the elderly and people with underlying health problems. And while we develop an antibody test, and the Food and Drug Administration has been approving the use of new different types of antibody tests to see if people have the antibodies created by the body's own immune system, which would provide immunity from further infection, assuming the virus doesn't mutate beyond recognition. So there's some anecdotal indications in Los Angeles and in Boston, in New York, and even overseas that this virus is actually spread much more broadly among people, and because many people are asymptomatic. In other words, it doesn't make them sick. but they do acquire the antibodies. But there may be a way, like some countries have done, is to identify through the antibody test people who have acquired those antibodies and allow them to be able to be among the first to go back to work. We also know that we're going to have to operate with appropriate social distancing and some of this personal protective equipment. All the while, we are in a race for these clinical trials to be concluded to come up with an effective treatment and, of course, a vaccine. So I think we need to get, we can't stay shut down forever without ruining the world's best economy. And certainly in Texas, we have a lot of people suffering, but we have to do so safely.
The legislation that Congress has passed includes assistance for families. Can you talk about more about who qualifies for a check and how soon Texans can expect to receive the funds from the government?
Well, this is pretty unprecedented to have the government just send you a direct deposited check in your account, but that's exactly what's happening. But it's based on income. So if you make less than $75,000 a year and you're an adult, you should have received or will receive very soon a $1,200 check from Uncle Sam, from the government. And of course, a married couple with children can receive up to a maximum of $3,400 as long as your family income doesn't exceed 150%. So that's really the first lifeline that we try to throw out to people who, through no fault of their own, don't have any money coming in the door and who are, live paycheck to paycheck. And so we know they're very vulnerable. So that is the first line effort, and then backed up by the unemployment compensation effort, then by the small business support, and then by the loan program through the Federal Reserve. That's designed to cover the whole spectrum, hopefully, of need.
Then finally, Senator, a lot of our members are business owners and they have questions about the loan and the loan forgiveness program, specifically the technical details about who qualifies, how they can get their loans forgiven. What's the best way for each business to figure out their individual situation and figure out what they can get waived and not get waived?
Well, we've got Tim Jeffcoat here from the Small Business Administration to answer some of those questions. But by now, many banks and credit unions have already had a lot of experience with these loans, because Texas actually was the #1 recipient of these loans, about $22 billion worth. That's the last figure I saw. And so they've had a lot of experience. So I would contact your local SBA certified lender, your banker, your credit union, and they will be in the best position to know about your individual business and financial circumstances and work with you to figure out what makes sense. So that would be the initial approach, and then Tim and the folks at SBA and also some of these other groups that provide counseling to small businesses can be helpful too.
Well, Senator, I know it's a busy time for you. I hope you're doing safe, and thank you so much for taking time with us. Let me pass things back to our Executive Director, Jagdeep Ahluwalia.
Thank you, Senator. We really appreciate your long-term friendship and association with the Chamber. We have had such a meaningful relationship with you and with your local team headed by Jay Guerrero. And we appreciate you're always responding when we reach out to you. Thank you very much. It is now my honor and privilege to introduce the Consul General of India in Houston, Mr. Asim Mahajan, who joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1998. Prior to assuming charge as Consul General of India in Houston in January 2020, he was ambassador to the World Trade Organization in Geneva. In his earlier diplomatic assignments, he has served as the Deputy High Commissioner in Indian missions in Kuala Lumpur and Dhaka, and as the Consul General of India in Osaka, Japan. He has also served in Indian missions in Tokyo and Laos. In his stints in the Ministry of External Affairs, New Delhi, he has served on various desks, handling affairs related to United Nations, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Myanmar, the Maldives. Besides, he has also served as the staff officer to the Minister of State for External Affairs and as Joint Secretary, coordinating the management of the annual Hajj pilgrimage from India. He has a master's degree in diplomatic studies from the University of Oxford in the UK, a master's degree in management studies from the Birla Institute of Technology and Sciences, Pilani, and has completed 2 annual training courses in World Trade Organization law from the Advisory Center on WTO law, Geneva. He speaks Japanese apart from English, Hindi, and some other Indian languages. He is married with a son and a daughter. It's my honor and privilege, Senator, to pass the mic on to the Consul General of India, Mr. Asim Mahajan, for his remarks.
Thank you, Jagdeep. Good afternoon, Senator Cornyn. It's my honor to join you today at this conference with the Chamber. Sir, I had the honor to meet you when I just arrived from Geneva in January, both you and Mrs. Cornyn, and you are a great friend of India. You need no introduction. You are also the founder of the Senate India Caucus, and you have been a great supporter of India-US relations. We greatly value the contribution you are making, and thank you for these very insightful remarks. And you are doing great work to support all of us here in Texas and across United States, making great contribution in the Senate. Senator, you are aware of the depth and range of our relationship. It needs no introduction to you, but I think the Indo-US Comprehensive Strategic Partnership is a defining partnership of this century. It has great potential. We share common values, we share common systems, and as you mentioned yourself, there is great potential for us to take this to greater heights. As you are aware, India has, our Prime Minister has led a very robust response to this pandemic. India is also under lockdown, and we have taken several measures, and including supporting the very large population. You can appreciate the challenges for a country of the scale and size of India, given the, we have more than so many people there, and we are also trying our best to deal with the pandemic. In the consulate here itself, we have helplines going. We cover 8 states in southern United States, and we are really flooded with miscellaneous queries. We are really proud of the Indo-American community present here. They are not only supporting the Indian community, but I think in their own way, they are doing great work in their own communities. There are people in Dallas, there are people in Colorado, Arkansas, Kansas, New Mexico, everywhere. They are trying in their own way to support everyone. And the consulate is also trying to support the many requests for assistance. We have a lot of requests for visas. You are aware we are working with the US ICS because people are caught in different circumstances because of the flight ban, etc. So I would just like to mention, given the paucity of time, Senator, I really look forward. I arrived just in January. I really look forward to your support and guidance. And the Chamber is, of course, working on many ideas. I'm sure, as you mentioned, that we will adapt to this new normal. Life has to come back to normalcy with, of course, social distancing and all the measures. And we will soon get back to our work to deepen the partnership. There is huge potential in areas like healthcare, in areas, energy. India is one of the biggest importers now. It has been badly hit, but we have presence of Indian public sector undertakings here. And in fact, it is from Texas that we import a lot of oil and gas. Then in information communication technology, in manufacturing, we already have about 2,000 American companies in India, 200 here, but we are working to deepen that in a much bigger way. And I was speaking to members of the Chamber, and I tell them there is a lot of opportunity. We can do a lot together, including in the current pandemic, in the area of cooperating in the area of research on COVID-19. You mentioned about Ansh Labs, which has just develop these antibody tests. There are many other people. Mahindra is manufacturing ventilator parts. And today there is, recently with University of Wisconsin, Bharat Biotech is working on one of the prospective candidates for the vaccine. And I will really look forward to your support and guidance to broaden our relationship. Also, in terms of supporting the businesses here, including the members of the Chamber, they will look for your guidance and support. There has been a double whammy of the energy prices and the crash in the oil prices and then this pandemic. But I personally feel that this is something which will teach us how to deal with such situations in the future. It has I think it will bring a lot of opportunities to deepen the partnership between India and United States. And that is really a very wide area and avenue in that, which we will work together, including promoting manufacturing in both countries and buying more goods from United States, getting more technologies, exchange of technology transfer in areas including like aerospace, defense, ICT, fintech. So we have identified a lot of core sectors, and in a structured manner, we are waiting through the year to develop these things and actually to deal with this pandemic and take our relationships to greater heights. So thank you again, Senator, and I'm sure a lot of people are looking up to you at this time for all the support. And the consulate, of course, I assure all of them that we are here. We have been open 24/7. Our helplines have been open since March 14th. We have a very large, over 500,000 Indo-American community here who are connected back home, and in our own way, we are trying to support them, meet various requests for support, whether it is students for boarding, lodging, etc., or in educational institutions. So thank you, Senator, and I look forward really to the opportunity in the near future again, sir, to come and meet you. I was in the World Trade Organization for 4 years. Last time we did get an opportunity to discuss a little bit, but I think we have a lot of work to do together, and India really appreciates your deep support and commitment to the relationship. Yeah, it goes without saying you are one of our pillars here in the United States for strengthening the relationship. Thank you again, sir.
Well, thank you, Mr. Consul General. Let me just say before I leave you for the rest of your call, how much I appreciate your comments, and it was great to meet you and welcome you at Kiran's restaurant,
Yes,
where
sir.
I learned some of the art of Indian cooking
Right.
on a level that I could never copy. But it was fantastic, and we look to make our relationship even stronger. And I think out of this crisis, there's going to be opportunity for us to do that.
Yes, sir.
And dealing with a fellow democracy that values transparency and the rule of law, as opposed to some other countries around the world that will go unmentioned, I think is a great advantage to both of us. And so we look forward to doing more of that. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you, Senator Cornyn. On behalf of our president and board and our members, we really thank the senator for making the time in such a busy schedule to always be available to the chamber and our members in the community. We also want to thank Consul General Mahajan, who will be making a formal presentation next Tuesday. I'm working with his office on that, and we'll be sending you out the invitation. We have an event this Friday focused on the COVID issues. You can go to our website to see that. But most important right now, we have one of the most important men in Houston right now, Tim Jeffcoat, the district director of the Small Business Administration. Everybody in business knows him, and he, with 3 of our member banks, BBT Compass, BBNT, BBV Compass, and Wallace State Bank, have been working very diligently in making loans available to our members and the community at large. I want to give out a shout out to Wallace Bank's Nasser Khan, who's worked very closely with the chamber, gone on to several webinars and programs to promote the SBA's packages. But with that, with no further ado, I hand over the event to the district director of the SBA, a friend of the chamber and of the community, Tim Jeffcoat, who will make some brief remarks. Any questions addressed to him can be typed into the question and answer box, and he will take them up one by one. We will extend this webinar till 3:30. The Consul General may have other areas to take care of, so he's welcome to say, but we really appreciate your support. We appreciate the support of Jay and Senator Cornyn's office. With that, it's on to you, Tim Jeffcoat. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll just make a few quick comments about what's going on with the SBA. You all are familiar with the Payroll Protection Program funding that was recently consumed. In 14 days, we lent or guaranteed loans in 14 times greater quantity than we normally do. So 14 years worth of lending in 14 days. You know that they're before Congress now. is an additional round of funding that hopefully in the next day or two or three will provide additional funding for PPP. So if you were not able to take advantage of it the first time, you will now have another opportunity once they pass that funding. The PPP is, just to restate what the senator said, it's for up to 2 years, up to $2 million, 1% interest rate, no payments for the first 6 months. If you spend the money as it was intended to be used, then it can be forgiven 100%. The EIDL loan is a little different. Whereas PPP is focused on payroll, the EIDL is for all of your costs. So if you have, let's say, a manufacturing operation and you have maintenance personnel that you have on contract, and you require supplies and shipping materials and your shipping costs and all those kinds of things, those can go into the EIDL. So the EIDL loan is more versatile. It will be a little more slower than the PPP. PPPs are able to be executed by area banks quite quickly. The EIDL typically is taking about 30 days. I just got off the phone a little while ago with a business that applied towards the latter half of March, so around March 20th, something like that. And she's just received her EIDL and her PPP funding, so she's in good shape. So to give you an idea of the time frame that is likely to take for EIDL funding. It also has been depleted, as the senator mentioned. So you will, hopefully you will see some more funding come from Congress so that will open up. The biggest difference to you, or maybe it's not the biggest, but an important difference for you, is that PPP is from one of the area lenders. The EIDL is directly from the SBA. With EIDL, you will apply on our website. So once you hear that the president has signed this new round of legislation that gives more funding to the EIDL, then shortly thereafter, you should see the portal for EIDL applications open again on the SBA website, and you'll be able to apply at that time. One more quick comment about this. Going back to PPP, if you have not pursued that and you would like to, you need to get your payroll records organized quickly. Get ready with your last 12 months worth of payroll records so that you can calculate your average monthly payroll and average monthly headcount. You're going to need that information for the loan. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that your payroll each month is $100,000, and that's for 10 people. Then you will be looking at a loan for 100,000 times 2.5, so that's $250,000. When you are dispersed the money, then we are looking for you to spend that money on 10 employees at $1,000 a month, or whatever the numbers were I just used. So you're going to spend the money exactly the way you have been using in the last year. If you are going to pursue the EIDL loan, then you're going to need to make sure you have available at hand your revenue for last year and your costs for last year and your headcount for last year. All three of those numbers are important. Some people will say, but Tim, I'm not sure exactly what to include in the cost for the EIDL. That's okay, do your best job. You know what your costs are. Again, if you have that factory, you know you have to buy boxes and you have to buy supplies that go into the manufacturing process, and you have to pay the contracts for people to maintain your equipment. So do your best, but then after you submit that information, you will have a chance to talk to SBA about those costs before a loan amount is agreed upon and before money is dispersed to you. So just do the best you can and get that application in as fast as you can. With that, Jagdeep, I think those are okay. One more thing. When you are considering which to look into, EIDL or PPP, or you can't decide, there's at least two things you can do right now. You can join in the daily SBA webinars that we do that talk about the two different programs, how they function, and how they can benefit you. Sometimes it's both that will benefit you. Some businesses really should be applying for both so that they can have all of their costs covered, and they can have, PPP is only for 8 weeks. EIDL was probably going to go up to 6 months or so that you can have both sides of the equation covered for your business. So you can attend those webinars and you can learn more. Right now, we're just doing one per day. We have been doing as many as 8 per day. We also do them in Spanish for people you know that prefer Spanish that would like to attend the webinars. As this new round of financing is released, we will immediately increase and probably do another 3 or 4 a day during the time that money is out there to make sure that we educate people as quick as possible. The second thing you can do is you can talk to one of the SBA's partners. So the Houston SCORE organization, the WBEA Women's Business Center, or the Texas Gulf Coast Small Business Development Centers. Those 3 organizations have around 200 people available to you right now at no charge to work with your business and help you understand the benefits of each or both and whatever is the best solution for you. To find those organizations, you can just Google those names, or you can go to my website. I'm going to read it off to you, www.sba.gov/tx/Houston. Or if you just Google SBA Houston, that should be the first hit on your query. Go to my website. In the middle of the page is something called Business Resources, and under that you'll see a category called Corona/COVID Resources. There you'll be able to find our most recent presentation that we use in our webinars. You'll find the webinar schedule. You'll find a list of local lenders that will do these PPP loans, and it'll also show you which of those lenders are currently accepting brand new clients. So if you've been working with one particular lender and you don't think that's the best one to work with in the future for whatever reason, great. Now you've got the ability to go see who's taking new clients, and you can contact those folks and talk to them now, today, or tomorrow before the next round of funding gets in place so that you can get your application set up and you can get ready for that next round of funding. I think that's the main comments I had. Jagdeep, are we going to take questions now?
Tim, the plan was that you have a Q&A box in front of you.
Right.
And you were going to pick the questions that you would like to answer and answer them in the sequence you will. I will only come back to thank you in the end because you're the man with the knowledge. I'm just a connector at this point.
Yeah, that's usually me though. Okay, so here we go. We don't know what's going to happen. I see some questions about the PPP application itself. When the new round of funding is completed, there may very well be changes to the PPP program as well as the EIDL program. So the applications may change. It's conceivable. If they do, you will hear about it in the news, you'll hear about it on our webinars, and you can hear about it from our partners. And then that will let you know whether those have changed. So if you have an application in right now with a bank, they're happy with it, but they never had a chance to get it into SBA systems previously, they should be able to do that now. That shouldn't be a problem. But stay tuned, you're going to need to check on that, because if those programs change materially and we wind up having to change the application forms, it's possible a bank may have to get you to recomplete one or maybe do an addendum for one. So stay tuned for that. We don't know the answer to that yet. I see some questions about the bank that you worked with, even though you might have applied early on, that you didn't get approved for your PPP. I don't know why. This is the whole PPP process is what we call a delegated process. So lenders are able to use their own forms, their own underwriting practices to collect the data, put it on an application, make sure they think it's okay. The main thing they're going to do is they're going to confirm your payroll numbers and make sure that you have certified that they are correct. Once they do that, then they submit it to an SBA system, and then it's done. After that, it's a matter of them finishing up the note and dispersing the money. So if you are applied early on and you did not get funded, you need to talk to your bank about why that happened. If they are a bank that, let's say, had, we've all seen some news reports, and if they said that they had thousands of applicants, well, maybe they just had so many they didn't get to yours in time. So a good question right now is, where are you in their queue? Are you the first application to go in when the new funding occurs? Or are you the 10,000th application to go in when the new funding occurs? So you need to talk to them and find out why. That's nothing that we know. That is strictly a function of that particular bank and how they were handling your application. I hope that that helps you.
Tim, may I interrupt with
yes, please.
A statement? So in one of the previous webinars that you hosted with one of our member banks, a point that was brought up was that when people are filling up the application, they sometimes put just their office number. And since most people are working from home and their office number may not have been routed to their cell phone appropriately, so when a banker calls for some missing documents, they may miss the boat because the bank could not contact them. So I was talking to a couple of our banker members and they said a lot of people who were not approved because their applications were incomplete. So the point I want to make is when you fill out a new application, remember to add your cell phone so that you are contactable. That's all. Back to you, Tim.
Okay, absolutely. So just in summary about that aspect of PPP, everything to do with the loan is at your bank. So whichever banker you worked with or whichever lender you worked with, because they aren't all banks, you need to go talk to them now. If you have an application there and it did not get approved the first time, you want to find out what is the status. Get them to tell you, yes, it is approved by our bank. We're okay with it. We're happy with it, but we need to get it in SBA's system. If that's the case, then ask them, where are you in that pile of applications for loans? Are you the first one or the last one? And then that may help inform your decision about what to do in the future. I've also had people say, I'm applying for PPP. My bank has a large volume of applications to enter the second time. How about if I do a second application at a smaller bank that doesn't have very many people in their queue the second time around? Is that a problem? No, that is not a problem. We don't care. The first lender that puts your application into SBA's system will be the one that gets your loan. They will be the one that gets to help you. If someone comes in after that and they try to input your application into SBA's system, it will then tell them that they can't fund you because you're already being served by another bank. So that's also another pretty common question that we get. I do see some people asking about their idle advance and waiting for SBA to reach out to you with the EIDL. Yes, that is true. That is the situation. If you have applied for EIDL and you got an application number, then you are being worked on. It's just going to take a little time. I am personally aware of businesses that got everything done within 30 days, but then I'm also personally aware of businesses where it has not happened in 30 days. It's been about 30 days and they are still waiting to be contacted by the SBA. All I can tell you is that this is like Hurricane Harvey, 5 of them happening in every state simultaneously. This disaster is truly completely unprecedented in its size. So we're working as fast and as hard as we can to address all of the applications, but it's going to take some time. So if you submitted, here's the bottom line. If you submitted and your application starts with a 2, that's great. That means you are a very early applicant. That also means you will not get an advance because there was no way at that time to request an advance. If your application starts with a 3, then that means you are able to use what we call our streamlined process, which is also the one where you could choose an advance. It's a misconception that the advance is always $10,000. It is not. The advance is up to $10,000, and that is based on $1,000 per employee. So if you have 5 employees in your company, then your advance would be $5,000. You won't get notification from the SBA that your advance has been processed. The only way you'll know is watching your bank account. If 5,000 or if anything shows up there from the U.S. Treasury, then that should be your advance. And as I say, then it should be $1,000 per person. If you're a sole proprietor or an independent contractor and you applied for EIDL, then your advance will be for one person, $1,000. I know you'd like to have a status on it. You'd like to know that you're the 9th person in line to have somebody work on your loan at EIDL. But unfortunately, right now, we are unable to give you that information. So if you have an application number, that means your application is in the system. It is going to be looked at, and you simply have to wait. I know that doesn't sound fun, but it is a fact. If you contact our SBA disaster service number or their email, that what they will tell you is your application is in process. They won't be able to tell you anything more than that at this time. So one more thing about that, if you applied for EIDL, you have a 22 as your application number, that means you couldn't apply for the advance. When the applications reopen, assuming that they get funded again by Congress, you may enter another EIDL application. It won't change your first one. It'll just get added to your first one. And what it will do is it will allow you to request the advance this time. And again, that's up to $10,000, calculated as $1,000 per employee. So hopefully that will take care of some of the questions that you've had about the EIDL program. Now I'm kind of scrolling through the questions, taking a look at them. Yeah, so this is a great question. EIDL loans are capped at $2 million per transaction. So if I had my company and I go apply for an EIDL loan, the maximum I could get is $2 million. Now, if you own 3 companies and they are 3 different and distinct companies with 3 different EINs, that could be 3 different EIDL loans. So keep that in mind. That's possible. There is also a special new larger size standard for hospitality and restaurants. So, and it is 500 employees per location. Now that was based on the initial round of funding from the CARES Act. It is completely possible that the next round of funding will change that. We don't know. So we just have to stay tuned and see what happens with that. I see a few questions here, and I'm trying to answer the ones that seem to be the most common requests. And I see several questions about energy and oil and gas companies. To the SBA, there's no difference between the companies, whether you're energy, oil and gas, you're a muffler shop, or you are a physician's office. It doesn't make any difference. You're all eligible to apply for these. So I'm not sure. I see several questions about what are we going to do about them. Well, we have PPP loans and we have EIDL loans, or we will have once Congress passes more funding. If you're looking for something else, then that may be something that would be coming from some other agency and not the SBA. There's questions about I'm a sole proprietor, or I'm an independent realtor, or I'm an independent consultant. What should I do? You are eligible to apply for either of those or both of those loans. So you are capable of doing that, and you are okay. Let me see. EIDL with foreign owners. So the problem with EIDL that have foreign owners, if it's a U.S. corporation that has foreign owners, this applies to PPP as well. Some folks have tried to apply using some kind of identification number from out of the country, and that won't work. It's going to be look for either a social security number or an EIN, an employer identification number. You need to use those in order to apply. Otherwise, as you try to apply, it's simply not going to accept the information because it doesn't care what an employer identification number would be from the UK or from Sweden or from Kuala Lumpur. It's only going to look for the US side of that operation. There's a question about the bank's responsibility, and I assume this is for the PPP. The bank's responsibility for the PPP, they have several, but the main thing, 2 main things. They need to make sure that you certified, you made all the various certifications, because once you certify that everything is true and accurate and that you truly are impacted by this disaster and you really do need the money, then you are then legally liable for that certification. The bank is not. The bank, though, does need to check your numbers on the PPP. So you need to present to them your detailed payroll records so that they can confirm your calculations and know that you have done it exactly the way that the CARES Act has asked for it to be done. And that is largely the extent of their obligation to the SBA. They do have some other things they have to do, but they're relatively small in comparison. So those are their main responsibilities. Also, when it comes to forgiveness, people ask about forgiveness of the PPP. That's also up to you. I'll restate, if you on average have 10 employees per month and you pay them $1,000 a month each, then in the 8 weeks following the PPP loan being dispersed to you, we expect you to hire 10 employees at $1,000 each per month. You will then certify to the bank that you did that. You will present to them records that you did that they will want to look at. But it is your certification. And if it is found later on that that was not true, then you will be criminally liable for that. So I'm sure nobody's going to cheat. Nobody's going to do that. But the bank will not be doing a detailed analysis of what you are presenting to them, but they will take a look at it. If they see a problem with it, they will let us know. Let's see. Raj Patel is asking, can you clarify how to calculate payroll hours? Yeah, it's going to be full-time equivalents for the head count. Also, you're just going to take whatever you did in a year and divide that by 12 in order to get your average payroll. It doesn't need to be more granular than that. The number of hours that's basically up to you. So the banks have guidance on what we're looking for, and it really comes down to the individual bank and what they'd like to see from you, because again, they have to certify that they looked at your payroll numbers and they agree with your calculations and your conclusions. So Raj, the very best thing for you to do is to talk to the lender of your choice about your specific situation, present your numbers to them. If that's a spreadsheet, you're going to need to have some kind of a payroll register probably to support that, or a 941 or something along those lines. So Raj, the very best advice I can give you is right away, get in touch with the banker of your choice and let them help you out with that. I know that you heard Jagdeep talk about Wallace Bank. I happened to be on a call with Wallace Bank earlier today, and Nasser Khan from Wallace Bank was explaining exactly what they look for from their clients and the kind of payroll records they like to see. And that's a great example of what you need to do. There are some questions here about the timing of the new funding. I have no idea. Your guess is as good as mine. I know that Congress is deliberating that now. While we're talking, they may have passed it. Remember that once both houses pass it, it's got to be the Senate and the House, then it goes to the president to sign. So even if they pass it now, it still has to go to the president to sign, and nothing would come into fruition until at the earliest, I would think tomorrow, possibly midnight. Also, again, we don't know what the final legislation will look like. If it calls for several changes to the program, that may delay rolling it out for a few days while we develop another official guidance for the lenders to help guide them through the PPP process. Yes, you can pay mortgage interest with the PPP. And yes, if you currently have a 7A or a microloan or a 504 or a community advantage loan from the SBA is paying that loan for you for the next 6 months, principal, interest, and fees, as long as it was in good servicing status at the beginning of this crisis. If you have existing SBA disaster loans for your business, then know that those have already been deferred for you until the end of this year. So you should be fine with that as well.
So Tim,
I have a question about
sorry,
yes,
go
sir.
ahead. No, go ahead, please.
Well, I have a question about, will any of this money be applicable for new opportunities? And the answer is no. The PPP is intended for payroll and a couple of other small things, but it's intended to pay paychecks. The EIDL is intended to keep you as you were last year on average, your average monthly expenses. It's not for doing anything new. It's not for repainting your building. It's not for buying new equipment. It's not for financing something new or refinancing existing debt. It is strictly for you to maintain status quo until the disaster is over. So that's another question I've seen in here a few times. If you want to do that, talk to any of the 200 or so SBA lenders in this area, and they can help you with a different kind of SBA guaranteed loan. And with that, Jagdeep, back to you.
You just answered my question, Tim, because that was a question we had received earlier this day from one of our members saying, I do not qualify, or I'm not interested in the disaster loan, but I want to start a new business. Is the SBA and other banks accepting applications? And I I'd anticipated your answer and I said yes. With that, I want to compliment you on how good you're looking in these circumstances. You might give the CNN TV anchors some lessons on how to look good on television.
Yeah, well,
I want to
you.
thank you
That's very
for
kind.
your wisdom and your knowledge, because you're really the frontline warrior with your team, Mark Winchester, Valerie, and the rest of them, because you must be fielding so many questions and calls these past few days. Because if I'm not wrong, you and the SBA have given out more money in 2 weeks than have been given in the last 9 years through the SBA program.
Yeah, in the last 14 days, more than in 14 years.
Okay, so that's even
just here in Houston, for the first 4 full days that SBA lenders were doing PPP here, they were doing about 2,000 loans a day, and we generally will guarantee about 1,600 loans a year. So in one day here in Houston, SBA lenders were doing more than normally occurs in a whole year.
So again, Tim, Tarush, our president, our board, our members, thank you, and every member of your SBA team, every banker who's helping our members, and help us scold the ones who are not. But thanks a lot for everything. Though I know both the senator and the consul general have left the call, I want to thank them and their team, Jay Guerrero with Senator Cornyn's office and Yasmin with the Consul General's office. So with that, we are coming to the end of this program. I want Bhavna to bring up the last slide, which basically encourages our attendees to visit our website and to follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, because we keep updating the information on those 2 sites. Bhavna, if you could also pull up the flyer for Friday's event, because I believe that is a very significant event. And I would encourage everybody on this call to consider registering for that. A few minutes ago, I sent you this invite to everybody who was logged into our webinar. And once again, I am requesting Bhavna, who we all appreciate for all her help in keeping this chamber running and in putting this event today together, to help us close down the meeting. With this, thank you everybody for participating. The meeting is over.